You've worked hard for what you have. Your money, your assets, your 401k, and home. Isn't it all worth protecting? Nearly 1 in 4 consumers have been a victim of identity theft. LifeLock Ultimate Plus helps protect your finances with up to $3 million in reimbursement. LifeLock alerts you to identity threats you might miss. And if your identity is stolen, your dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. Let LifeLock help protect what you've worked so hard for. Save 25% off your first year on LifeLock Ultimate Plus at LifeLock.com/aware. Terms apply.
Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, we have a special mini-series just for you.
We're going through the entire first season of King of the Hill, and you can only hear it if you're a $5 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
We're giving the Talking Simpsons treatment to all 13 episodes of King of the Hill's first season, and if you want a free sample, you'll find the first episode available for free in the Talking Simpsons feed. Patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. It's the only place you'll find the first season of Talk King of the Hill.
Made you go click, 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 click. It's real easy, man.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to What a Cartoon, where giant robots are a steal at just $2. I'm your host, Monkey Thing Bob Mackey. This is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and I could go for a burger or 5.
And who do we have on the line?
I'm Matthew J., UMD pilot, and the UMDI pilot is Van Helsing.
And today's episode is the Megas XLR episode, Test Drive.
Whoa! Where'd they come from?
The future. Now hand over my robot, you primitives!
I'm not with him.
So Matthew J. is here with us today talking about an obscure gem from the aughts from Cartoon Network. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, I was 13 when this show was on, and all I ever did, as I've said many times in this podcast before, I just sat around all day and watched cartoons. I lead a very different life now. Now I sit around and I do nothing because I'm too sad. I just sit there and do nothing.
You can just leave the cartoons on in the background.
And you don't just do nothing. You co-host the podcast Deep End, and you have the Patreon for Cartoons 101. You're a very active young man.
Yeah, we do the Deep End, which explores adult animation, particularly from the Adult Swim Network. And we just had you boys on to talk about Home Movies Season 2 in an episode that people love. I got a lot of great responses to that.
Oh, good. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, DVD, DVD.
But the show is not on DVD.
No, and there's a interesting reason for that I'll get to in the history.
Yeah, I guess if you're interested in watching this at home, it's easy to find. Just people put it up on YouTube and Daily Motion, but it's officially available only on iTunes, I guess.
Yes, and the Xbox Live services. Those videos have not been delisted yet in glorious SD that you can watch on your Xbox One.
On the One, okay.
Yeah, well,
I figured they would have cut off after 360. Like, that's enough. No more.
They sold it on the 360, but apparently it's still listed. Like Xbox Live, they at the very least are like, if you buy a Microsoft video, you got it forever. Like that's how they treat it. But yes, again, there's an interesting reason for that. But this show, I had actually never given a second thought until a little over a year ago. Matthew J. alerted me to its existence. When I heard about it, I was like, oh, this is the show I would have loved, and I should have given it a chance instead of being in my many times I've mentioned too cool for Cartoon Network's original period of my life of the mid-2000s.
A lot of people were ignoring it at the time, except for kids, because we were past the age of the cartoons, kind of, and then we're also it's like the third era of cartoons. Like the Ed, Edd n Eddy era is kind of the second one, and then you get into this, and it's a bunch of weird shows that kind of all just got canceled, and nobody really paid attention to. Some of the stuff that has survived from that is like Totally Spies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Think about.
I remember
Meg
Matthew. I was going to say, I remember the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy was the one show that actually persisted and was pretty good from what I remember.
Yes. Oh, man. Please do an episode about that. I'm also a big fan of that show. But Megas itself is this show. It's kind of the first show that did what all shows do now, which is a lot of shows that reference anime and stuff, but it would always be Speed Racer, their mouth moves fast and stuff happens in the background. But
like in
Megas,
Clerks, when we did Clerks.
Exactly. Like the Clerks anime references or Dexter, Go Dexter, Family Go, that kind of thing. But Megas was like incredibly hyper specific about video games and anime at a perfect time for me to be very excited about that.
Yeah, it comes from like the first generation of American animators, it feels like, who don't look down on anime and realize like anime was awesome and they wanted to bring in the things that were awesome about it. Like the jokes in this that are about mechas are not jokes about stylistic genre things that you can look down on anime for or make assumptions about the medium. It's more about what if a fat American did anime things. Like the joke is more on slovenly Americans.
It's funny that this tribute to anime, so on Adult Swim, the counterpart of this would be Perfect Hair Forever, which was airing at the exact same time, which was just like anime is the worst thing. It's so stupid. Here are the 3 references that we know about anime. So it's like we have point counterpoint on Cartoon Network here.
There was also a show called Kappa Mikey, which I think predated this a little bit and was like kind of interesting at the time, but is very embarrassing to revisit now.
Well, and Bob, I would assume you didn't watch this show either.
Actually, I've seen a bit of it because at the time, my 2 best college friends who've been on What a Cartoon, Chris and Nick, they watched a lot of Cartoon Network, and I could never tell if they actually liked the cartoons or didn't because they made fun of everything, but we did watch some of this together.
Oh, okay, man.
Yeah. But I was a very anime elitist where it's just like, I'm not going to watch a thing that fakes anime. There's so much anime I haven't watched. I've changed my mind since then, but that's where I was in 2004. Still going to anime cons, still watching anime, still really involved in anime, and I didn't cotton to these anime wannabes, but now I can see like, oh, this is a cool thing to do. So I'm cool with it now.
And I'll tell you what really sold me on finally giving the show a chance and doing an episode of What a Cartoon about it, especially after Evangelion as the next episode. But it was because Matthew J. that alerted me to the fact that this is from the creators of MTV's Downtown, a show I really, really liked in 1999.
I barely saw it, and I was watching a bit of it to refresh my memory. It's all on YouTube, by the way. That never got a home release or any release. It was immediately forgotten and kind of buried by MTV. But the only notable thing about that series is it made Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein's show, The Downtowners, change its name to Mission Hill. So that's the only thing I remember about MTV's Downtown.
That sounds like one of those apocryphal things, but I asked him about it, and he was like, yes, we actually were annoyed that show came out. But it is a really, I think it holds up mostly. We're actually about to do a Patreon episode about it on the Adult Swim show because we do a bonus show that's other adult animated shows that didn't air on Adult Swim, and we've been doing a bunch of MTV shows, so that's like the next one that we watched as kids that we're doing. So it's kind of serendipitously you decided to do this at pretty much the same time, and now I get to revisit the whole oeuvre. Now I got to watch what's the car show that they made after this?
Motor City.
Yeah, and I got to rewatch that. That show's cool. Yeah. It's not as good as Megas, but I liked it.
I loved MTV Downtown. We're gonna, in some point in the future, we got to do What a Cartoon about it as well. The last time we all hung out together, we were kind of goofing on undergrads. But Downtown is the better version of that because the main character is also like a mega dork who has a crush on a girl, but the real girl who likes him is his, one of the guy's best friends.
Who's Asian.
Who is Asian. They're, Asian as well. But
both shows.
But they are drawn more dumpy and less... The show hates the guy. Like, the show's like, oh, no, this guy is a loser for just wanting to have action figures and put him on the wall. Like, you're a fucking dork. Like, it doesn't think it's cool to do that.
And notably, one of the characters...
undergrads, it's this like beautiful, very attractive woman that like keeps accidentally getting naked in front of him.
Whoops.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like how he realizes that he loves her is because he keeps seeing her naked.
And notably, one of the main characters in Downtown appears in Megas XLR, pretty much unchanged, except he's not always drinking beer.
Yeah, he's based on a real man.
That makes sense.
He won't be at this convention called ToonCon that is in Pasadena next month, but apparently the guy who inspired Coop will be there because a lot of these characters are based on real guys. Which is why they use the same archetypes a lot because they're like friends of theirs.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. They're going to be at that con. I look forward to at least a celebration of Megas. But I now think this show would have been the exact show I would have loved then because, it was 2004 around the debut of Venture Brothers as well.
Yeah.
And it's kind of living in the same world of with a spirit of like celebrating but also joking around with everything I loved as a kid. Anime, Transformers, video games, ska, all those things.
2004 was a new age for ska.
I didn't really love ska, but there was a summer where I listened to Real Big Fish many, many times.
Was there like a mini ska revival, or was I just insane? Because I started re-listening to ska in 2005 for like 8 months. Then I realized, what am I doing?
I don't remember.
Scott never died, Bob. I had a wonderful summer where all I did was listen to Real Big Fish and Catch 22 and bands like that. And that was 2019. I'm doing it right now.
Well,
That's all I listen to still.
If you come visit us in Berkeley, Real Big Fish is playing and Bowling for Soup is opening. And actually,
that's the other band I listen to too much.
Thanks to Podcast The Ride, I found out that the main guy from Bowling for Soup now writes music for Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Oh,
yeah.
He is Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, he is Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, he's the voice of... Actually, that episode of Podcast The Ride I put off for a bit because I was like, they're just going to make fun of Bowling for Soup. I know it. And then when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, they're just ripping on Bowling for Soup, a band that I enjoy.
But now that I watch more of the show, what feels tragic about it is that I feel like if it had just aired slightly later on Adult Swim, I think it would have really been something. But it got stuck in this kind of gray area of a little too much of a boy for Crazy Town, too crazy for Boys Town. But it was kind of in the middle of like, it's not old. It's for an older demographic, but not adults like Adult Swim. It's like too jokey for Toonami also.
Yeah, it feels like sort of like Bill and Ted. Like these characters are clearly stoners and dirtbags, but they're not allowed to drink or smoke weed. So the thing that they do is eat fast food. It's like burgers and video games are the drugs and alcohol of this kidified, clerks world they're living in.
Well, why don't we talk about how the show came into being? And to do that, we need to talk about 3 different guys who all met at the School of Visual Arts, the art school on the East Coast, a premier one that I believe previous guest on the show, Ian Jones-Cordy, went to as well. SVA.
And Steve Yurko, co-host of the Adult Swim podcast.
Oh, nice.
So is there like a Cal Arts East-West rivalry going on?
I wonder. It seems like if the animators I know, if they didn't go to Cal Arts, they went to SVA or were self-taught. I think it's like one of those 3 things.
It is kind of true. We actually just got to a chapter on our Venture Brothers podcast that in the Venture Brothers book, they shout out SVA because they mentioned, they aired the New York production for the first 6 seasons of the show. So they pulled a lot of SVA talent out of there.
It's funny that they Venture Brothers went to New York once they leave New York for production purposes.
They just missed it.
The SVA in the early 90s, there were 3 men who were children of the early 70s, Gen Xers, all 3. George Kirstick, Jody Schaefer, and Chris Prynoski. And Jody and Chris were from New Jersey, while George was from kind of all over, as he'd describe it in interviews. And they got together at SVA in the early 90s. The trio, along with several other artists that they would work with continually throughout their careers, were united in their love of toys and comic books and anime and video games. All easy to identify loves of our youths as well, even though they're just a few years older than Bob and me. And so when they got out of SVA, they wanted to make shows that they themselves would have wanted to see. After graduation, George headed off in the direction of live action for his early jobs. Kirstick would say that he can't draw, not like Jody and Chris can. While meanwhile, Jody and Chris stayed in New York and worked at pretty much the biggest animation house in New York you could have worked at in the mid-90s, MTV. They worked primarily on shows like Beavis and Butthead and also the ads, the fucked up cartoon ads. And including they were seen as such valuable animators to Mike Judge that when it was time to make Do America, Jody and Chris were the primary animators on the White Zombie music video sequence.
Oh, that makes sense. Done in a very different visual style than the movie itself.
Yeah, which, knowing that this is skipping ahead, but that Chris Prynoski would kind of work on Super Jail, the similarities there are very similar.
By the way, that's our $10 movie podcast this month, Beavis and Butthead Do America. So check it out on the Patreon, patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
I was happy to find this out in the pre-doing that one research now. But yeah, so Jody and Chris, they were deep in the MTV family. And so, of course, Chris Prynoski, he worked his way up to MTV to pitch his own series. And it would be a series eventually called MTV's Downtown. Jody would work with him on it. And in 1998, they also called up Kirstick, who was having not as much success, at least according to his IMDb page, which has almost no credits before Downtown. They call up Kirstick and like, could you come on and be story editor for this? And Kirstick says, what's a story editor? Chris says, I don't know, but we need one. Could you just come here?
It's a paycheck.
Basically, they all worked on the stories together, but Kirstick oversaw in his showrunner capacity kind of the stories, while Pronsky was animation director on the show, and Jody was character designer and kind of art director on the series. All positions that they would repeat on Megas XLR years later. And also, Downtown is a podcast for another day, but one character I will point out is the character of Goat.
Yeah.
A freaky looking tattoo artist voiced by Scott Reneker, who is Goat in real life, and they just drew him and had him voice his own character. Like Matt said before, they pretty much drew a lot of their friends into the show. It's a very autobiographical kind of work, their shows. Though Emmy nominated in 2000, Downtown was canceled by MTV, pretty much shoved to air all at 1 a.m. I taped them. I stayed up late to tape them all.
That's why I never saw them, because even that was still when Daria was running and other things. I just could never find Downtown.
Mm-hmm. Well, as Kirstick says, that it was MTV was just going through a change in what they wanted to be, which is kind of a joke in this episode about that. And what they seemingly didn't want to be going into 2000 was a channel of cartoons. They were just kind of done with animated series. Once Daria wrapped up with its TV movie, that was kind of the end of the animation era of MTV. And
and they keep trying, and they just fuck it up every time. It's a real shame, because sometimes I like the shows that they make, and then they always cancel it and don't give it a chance. I was the one person on the entire planet who enjoyed Good Vibes. I liked that show, and it got canceled.
It was marketed, it just looked like a Family Guy wannabe, or like of the Family Guy style.
Just like Paradise PD and all those other and Brickleberry, all that junk. Yes.
Everyone's got to do their time at Brickleberry. We learned from the Futurama series we did.
So after Downtown, Pronsky with his wife Shannon founded the animation studio Titmouse in 2000.
Wow, okay.
And one of their first jobs was in Freddy Got Fingered. There's an animated series sequence where Tom Green's character sells an animated series, and it's just a zebra man stomping, saying like, "My hooves, my hooves." That was Titmouse, one of their first jobs.
Wow.
Wow.
So he was still kind of working in the MTV family then. Meanwhile, Jody and Kirstick decided that their next show they were going to pitch themselves, and they kind of came up with it while playing video games and watching SDF Macross, as they tell the story. Just like, what if a gamer was the star of a mecha show? That was their initial thought.
That was back when gamers were the underdogs.
Yes, yeah.
Not terrorizing people online.
Finally, these gamers are going to show people they're not worthless.
This is one of those shows that a lot of the sentences during the pitch ends with "and shit." What if like a guy like us and shit, like had a robot and shit, like that kind of pitch?
And not just any fat slob, but a big old schlub from New Jersey, which a very New Jersey spirit to all their stuff, I'd say. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. It's also I always have to point this out when it comes up, and you've pointed this out for me sometimes, Hank. It's a particularly South Jersey show as well. There's some very specific references to South Jersey on the show that I appreciate, including being right over the bridge from Philly. I think it's technically a North Jersey show, but they reference there's a lot of like cheesesteak talk, and they talk about Philly and stuff, which as a kid, when that was a thing that just never happened on TV, that also is a reason the show was very important to me at the time.
Based on what I watch for this podcast, it takes place in a very unpopulated part of Jersey where there are no people, all the buildings are empty except for the school, and there are no cars or foot traffic. So it's like my hometown.
Yeah.
The neighborhood he's in actually looks like the neighborhood I grew up in. I like that every time the robot comes out of the ground, it destroys the house. And then in this episode, he's like, what does this do? And it immediately like vaporizes the house next to it. That looks like the street I grew up on.
I do like the kind of sickly color palette they use in the show. It doesn't speak well to Jersey. I know Jersey's the Garden State's beautiful, but not the Jersey they're showing us here.
Yes, yeah.
There's an episode where they beat up a bunch of monsters like in a row. It's like a gauntlet of boss fights, and then he just like rolls them up into a ball and throws them in the river. The woman who's on the show, Kiva, she's like, "Where are they gonna go, Coop?" And then he's like, "I don't know. Philly? And then that's kind of how we all feel in New Jersey. Like, let's send all our garbage over the bridge to Philly.
And so Jody and Kirstic, they worked together on creating a demo reel in the year 2000, which in a very interesting story that like they even put in the press release announcing the show officially in 2004. They tell the story that at San Diego Comic-Con in 2000, they were at a panel and they saw Cartoon Network programming executive Linda Semensky, and we're like, we got a tape, we got a show here. And they also told them, like, you know, we did make a show before, we're not nobodies. So giving that to her, they then sold a pilot. They're like, you know what? They said that they didn't hear anything for 3 months, and then we're told, you know what? Let's try this as a pilot in the not waning days, but the cartoon program was getting old in the tooth, long in the tooth. Two of them worked together and hired Pernosky as the storyboarder and director of the original pilot called Lowbrow, which I only just saw today. I looked it up today. Lowbrow is a lot of this. Like, it was 7 minutes long, and so they reworked a lot of that into the pilot, like reanimating scenes or even just reusing some clips too. Except
they like recolor a bunch of it too. Some of it you can tell is the same animation. They just like their hair is a different color.
And production only on the pilot was handled by Madhouse, actually, though, you know, not the most expensive part of Madhouse, but Madhouse nonetheless. And the series, the Lowbrow, as it was called then, premiered in 2002 on the What a Cartoon show with the core cast comprising of David DeLuise, the son of Dom DeLuise, as the lovable lunkhead Coop.
He's not wearing a fat guy hat.
Chain wallets are his generation's fat guy hat. And then is his more conniving sidekick Jamie is Stephen Blum, the wonderful voice actor, mostly from anime at the time, and Wendy Lee, also of anime, mainly at the time, as the futuristic no-nonsense warrior Kiva. If you're assuming he cast these guys straight from Cowboy Bebop, Kirstic said yes, that is exactly what they did because they like Cowboy Bebop and they wanted Spike and Faye in their show.
I think when I was more annoying, even more annoying than now, by the way, 15 years ago, I was like, they just cast the anime voices. They want to be anime. It's like, well, now it's cool. I think it's cool.
Well, those guys never get out of the anime ghetto and onto, like, you know, union fucking shows then. They didn't do that. So this was a real opportunity for Steven and Wendy Lee. They put out Lowbrow. You know, it does okay. It's, in ratings, but it wins the 2002 cartoon contest, which meant that it would get its own series by definition of the contest. So it was retooled as a 30-minute action series that will reside in the very popular Toonami block. But it would be renamed from Lowbrow to Megas XLR, XLR standing for Extra Large Robot. And I think that's a better name than Lowbrow. Lowbrow doesn't really tell you what it is, you know? Megas a little more.
So I was looking at the list of cartoons, and the last one to premiere was the summer before this. So Evil Con Carne was the last cartoon.
Oh,
so was this the
okay.
first original Cartoon Network program for kids that was not a cartoon?
I think so, yeah. It's
or
just
like, oh, sorry. I mean, like in the year following that last cartoon, they just phased out the branding, I guess.
Yeah, maybe XLR was one of the last to win that contest to get a series, but it's produced under Cartoon Network Studios. So I think they dumped Hanna-Barbera a long time ago by this point anyway. But
yeah, I think they just like dropped the branding because it was still all the same shit. Like they started the CN City bumpers pretty soon after this, and Megas is included in some of those. So it's like, it's all the same. They just stopped using the word cartoon.
Yeah,
cartoon,
I mean,
think. You know, every time like a new guy comes as there's probably some new president of the network or something that was like, I'm going to usher in the new age where we take cartoons seriously and don't call them whatever dumb reason they have to do things like that.
I mean, I think Nickelodeon, were they still hanging on to the Nicktoons moniker at this point? Or did they still hold on to it?
I think so. They were calling they had a Nicktoons network in the early 2000s and deep cable. So I think they were still using that term.
I think, sorry, this is going off on
shows like As Told by Ginger and stuff around that time that were still use the word Nicktoon.
I was just thinking that the reason that these cartoons were named Cartoons and Nicktoons was to signify they were original content because cable networks were not the home for that in the early 90s. So that, I guess they kind of outgrew the point of that.
Yeah, by 2000, Cartoon Network was by 2004, it was all original content pretty much, or at least newly licensed anime, if not original content. Fun fact, too, about Lowbrow, it made its debut in the Toonami block, as in they were airing the short as kind of a preview of when it would be joining Toonami later. They first aired it in the Toonami block during 2003's Giant Robot Week, which was also saw the televised debut on Cartoon Network of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and also Martian successor Nadesco as well. It was heavily, even the first 2 episodes, that's all they played, heavily edited of Evangelion.
Oh, I forgot Nadesco was on there too. Wow.
Yeah. ADV got a pretty good deal there in 2003. Like, yeah, you can actually, listeners would have heard in the previous week's episode, I dropped in some Giant Robot Week ad bumpers so you got to hear Stephen Bloom talk about Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I have watched those airings of Evangelion. I downloaded some VHS rips of it. They are heavily edited. The biggest edit is that they just remove Pen. They're just like, Pen. We need to, I think it was like mostly for time. They were like, what can we cut out of here that doesn't really affect the show? It's Pen. Because Pen is cool and he's a funny little animal and stuff, but it's mostly world building about the polar ice caps melting. That's like all he exists for, really.
And I think the first time you see him, isn't he just getting a beer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also looking at Shinji's penis, which they kind of just have to cut that bit out too.
Yeah, that whole scene's gone.
The show was originally planned to launch in December of 2003, but they had to delay it some. I think there were a few production issues. So it would really debut at May 1st, 2004. Kirstick would be the showrunner on story. Jody was art director, and Pranoski was series director overseeing the animation. And he was they were backed up by writers like Jack Monaco and Jack Alvino, and directors Kelsey Mann and Sue Parado, and also with music written by Sean Clement. Production was mainly out of Burbank in the Cartoon Network studios, though Titmouse did help with some stuff, but they weren't the full-on producers of the show. And meanwhile, the overseas stuff was done by regular partners with Cartoon Network on that, Sunmin in South Korea. And so, yes, after... when it debuted on May 1st, 2004, it was at 9 p.m. It feels like a good spot now when you think about it programming-wise, because it would be the bridge from the children's stuff in the daytime to the anime violence slackerdom stonerism of the Adult Swim. So stick Megas at 9 p.m. That makes sense, but didn't work out so well for Megas. Added to the series, not featured in the pilot Lowbrow, were Goat, who is essentially the same character from Downtown, except his cigarette has been replaced with a lollipop, though it basically just looks like a cigarette all the time. They kind of have one shot in the first episode that like, see, it's a lollipop, kids.
Sanji style.
He loves candy.
And then we got Clancy Brown as Glorft leader Gorath, which it's always great to hear Clancy Brown as a villain. He's perfect at that. It's a voice made for yelling at people. And we've got Kevin Michael Richardson as the recurring second in command of the Glorft fleet. Gotta enunciate that T at the end of Glorft. It's not Glorf, Glorft. And the show was a nerd's paradise with so many loving homages. I was just looking up a few of them. I did not watch every episode of the show ahead of time, but not just retro video games, but also like there's a group that's basically Voltron and Gatchaman in the S-Force, they're called. There's Sailor Moon characters, the Ultra Cadets. There's Transformers / Mazinger Z characters who one of them is voiced by Peter Cullen. There is a Captain Warlock, not Harlock. Captain Warlock, totally different.
Better name.
And there's also like Smurfs type characters. The series finale is a 2-parter that's basically Star Trek's Mirror Mirror. Even my favorite, a parody of the then obscure Marvel villain MODOK, named Magnanimous, and he was voiced by a man who had the chin to fit the job.
And I thought you were tough. Not so tough against the Sonic Abominator. Groovy.
He said the line.
He did it.
Said it.
So he played Duke Nukem.
He also, like, one of his robot arms is a giant chainsaw. He gets in a giant robot with a chainsaw arm.
Yep.
You know what? I saw him in the opening, and I probably heard that he did the voice a long time ago, but I was like, that's got to be Bruce Campbell. It looks like him.
They tell a funny story, too, of approaching him at a convention and going like, here's a script. We'd love for you to be in it. And he said that they totally would have understood if his people guarding him would have said, back off, go away. But instead, Bruce was like, oh, okay, let him come over here. I want to see the script. And when he found out that they were not crazy, I mean, how many times has Bruce Campbell been approached by nerds who grew up watching Evil Dead?
I wrote Evil Dead 4.
But I think most of his casting these days is just from nerds who watched Evil Dead movies and now want him in their shows. I'm ashamed as an Evil Dead fan, I still haven't watched all the episodes of Ash versus Evil Dead.
Like 3 seasons of that now?
I think so,
it's over,
yeah.
but they made a lot of it. I didn't watch one.
It was weird
made for me.
It was weird to go from 20 years of no Evil Dead to having 30 hours of Evil Dead we're not watching.
I think the remake's pretty good too.
Oh yeah, I had heard that. It sounded too scary for me. I'm too much.
It's pretty spooky.
Yeah.
I also right when this show was airing, I had for some reason whatever deep digital cable movie channel was just playing Army of Darkness like constantly, and I watched it that summer like 50 times. I had never seen it before. I'd never seen Evil Dead 1 or 2, but I loved this movie. And that was right before these episodes with him in it aired. And I got to get all the references, even though unlike most people who had been watching this movie for like 15 years at this point, I had just seen it for the first time. I was totally in love with it.
I had similar timing, but with an episode of the show Reboot that is a full-on Evil Dead 2 parody, and I had just seen Evil Dead 2 in like 99. Like they're stuck in a cabin in the woods, and even a character pops their head out from the floorboards and says, "Dead by dawn, dead by dawn." Just to really hammer it home.
We're going to do Reboot soon. It's the pride of Canada.
Well, we got to have Wooly from JoJo back on, too. He is the world's expert on Reboot. But also other guests on the show included the wonderful Michael Dorn. We all love Worf, good old Michael Dorn. Tia Carrere. We've got Alan Young as well.
Ooh.
And previously mentioned Peter Cullen, who Optimus Prime, that's what we all know him from. And Cam Clark, which that just feels like video game nerd casting as well. Or I guess Ninja Turtles voice casting. One of those two nerdiness. So with such incredible niche references and clever writing, the show became a cult hit online, but it wasn't a huge hit that Cartoon Network would really hope the series to be. Still, they did renew it for a second season of 13 episodes, so 26 episodes total for Megas XLR, the second season premiering in 2005. As Kirstic tells it, halfway through the production on the last season, they knew it would be canceled, so they decided that they'd end with a fun two-parter that's kind of a Star Trek parody that leaves things open-ended, but gives you some finality as well, where Coop goes to an alternate universe where he fights an evil version of himself who is in shape and has an even more powerful Megas, which he brings back. And there's a clever bit where it seems like him and the Gorft will make up, and then Coop's robot slips in something and kills every robot except for the leader of the Glorf. And he's like, "How dare you? We shall fight again another day." And that's where the series ends. Ironically, though, Megas XLR is the longest running series by these guys because Downtown got canceled like in 3 episodes. They did the show Motor City for Disney XD, and that got 1 season and barely aired as well. So getting 2 seasons is kind of the best they ever did as a group of people.
Yeah, they call it 2 seasons, but I think it's just one of those, like, they bought a certain amount of episodes and then they bought more episodes. Like, and then because they're like the first season ends September 4th, 2004, and then the second season begins October 16th, 2004. Like, I think it's Netflix calling things 2 seasons.
Oh, yeah.
And it's probably like they also get a bunch of new staff in season 2 and stuff too. It's weird. Like, it's not like the show aired for a while and then they bought another season and then made it and then aired those. It's cartoon production is all weird and hard to figure out, really.
That does sound more like a 26 episode order that they just called 2 seasons.
Pronowski also directs the first 13 episodes, and then the second 13 series have like a bunch of different directors, including Juno Lee, who's the co-director of Venture Brothers now. And it's...
I can't imagine directing all of the first season of an entire animated series. It's crazy. No wonder people were brought in.
Well, and that he's doing it at the same time as like Titmouse is ramping up production. I think that's also probably why by the second bit, he's like, I can't. Like they're working on Venture Brothers. I feel like Venture Brothers is really when Titmouse became like the now they produce everything kind of show. Well, not everything, but they have a lot of shows now.
Didn't we just drive by their
We did. We drove by
Hollywood Digs.
Yes, yeah. It's basically on the same block, but like three. It's very near the abandoned Klasky Chupo building.
We don't know if it's abandoned.
That building rules. It's so sad.
There's no way to get in.
Square building with all the characters painted on the side who will never get a TV show.
It's a Rugrats prison.
There's no cars parked there in the daytime, and it's just a gray thing. But we can't, it would be wrong to just say it's abandoned. But yes, Titmouse, it was like on a little side street too in Hollywood. It was, man, if we stay there again, let's just storm the Titmouse offices and demand an interview with Pronowski's career is amazing. Like, I can't even touch on it all here. He's a very active man and still at it too.
I've heard also very nice. I've heard he's a very nice, cool guy.
How nice. And so with that cancellation of Megas XLR comes some very complicated business BS that I'm going to have to sum up as concisely as possible. But it explains why Megas XLR will probably never have another thing or even a Blu-ray release. So the short version is, and there's a really good breakdown by a Megas XLR fan who actually contacted a lawyer about hey, could you explain this to me? Cartoon Network not only canceled Megas XLR, but as Kirstic has openly said, Cartoon Network said that it was a write-off on taxes. They wrote it off on their taxes. So the millions spent on production to make the show wasn't taxed and was used to offset tax payments for other stuff in that fiscal year. Now, when you do that, at least for the time they made it and in perpetuity afterwards, if you call something a loss, then if you were to make more money on it on the future, then you'd fuck up your taxes or have to pay back taxes on something, because if it made more money, then it's not a loss. And so it's this thing of if Cartoon Network were to bring back this thing that wasn't that popular when it first came out, and if they brought it back and even just made money off of a DVD release of it, then that would make them maybe owe millions in back taxes that could not possibly be paid for by a DVD release.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
So they wrote it off as a loss.
Yep.
And if they were to make money on it in the future, it would not be officially a loss anymore.
Yes. And so they don't back taxes on it. So it can continue to be sold in the places it was sold beforehand. So they jumped on iTunes early. They're like, we're selling all our Toonami shows on iTunes. So
yeah, I guess the iTunes Music Store went live in 2004 or 3 or something like that. So I guess they could have got in early.
Yeah, so it's on there early, and it got on the Microsoft Store early.
Sure, 480p.
Yes. It's never been delisted. They're both still there. So if you want to pay $2 an episode to see it, you totally can. But it can't be sold anywhere else, apparently, like the Kirstic, Jody, and Pronowski have all in their own ways teased we're meeting up, we're talking about how to do more Megas, let's figure it out. And every time they have to go it can't legally, there's no way to do it. They can't even I think they even talked about Titmouse buying the property back from Cartoon Network, but apparently that doesn't work they said somehow it doesn't work in licensing. That's what they said in 2015.
If they ever got it back, which seems doubtful, it could be a much better show now because everyone is so much more anime literate.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like they'd be talking to people who know the language more, and it would be more successful.
Mm-hmm. And the trio of guys would sell another show, the previously mentioned Motor City. I've never seen it. But,
I haven't seen it either. 20 episodes on Disney XD.
Yes, yeah, in 2013. It aired around the same time as Gravity Falls premiere, as I think Disney was, trying to get a little more Cartoon Network in their original things. We talked about that a little bit in our My Life as a Teenage Robot one as well. That's where a lot of the original cartoon guys moved over to Disney around that time.
It's good. It's just you want it to be Megas in a lot of parts of it. And it's also got that thing where Megas has some CG elements to it, but is very beautiful 2D animation, animating these robots in the style of the classic things it's referencing, like old anime that was on cells and stuff. And Motor City, it's a bunch of cars, so they're all CG cars, and I just feel like it maybe came a little bit too early for it to look great. They do a great job of it, but it's it's just not as exciting to watch a bunch of stiff CG cars race each other as it is to watch a bunch of beautiful 2D animated robots fight each other.
Yeah, I think in general, what's always these guys have bigger dreams than the budgets they're allowed by cable, as in most cases. They do their best with it. Like Pernosky, I mean, Titmouse's whole thing is like we'll make it. Like we get that shit done on cheap ass Adult Swim budgets, you know. Skipping ahead to now, all of them have had different jobs. Jody kind of bounces around for seems to be different animation freelance gigs based on his IMDb, like, you know, animator here, storyboarder there. Doesn't have any other creator credits than this show, which he shares with Kirstick. Pernosky, as we talked about, he's still heading up Titmouse and its many animation jobs. And then meanwhile, Kirstick kind of bounced around. He's written for a lot of shows. He wrote for the Clone Wars show. He's had a lot of writing jobs on he worked on he worked on real Transformers after making this Transformers
I saw that,
tributes. Yeah. But now he is in the video game space entirely. He is director of story and creative development at Blizzard Entertainment. His primary credits on IMDb now are for that position working on Overwatch short films.
Oh, he's perfect
those
for
are
that.
really great.
Yeah, those are amazing.
He's actually, as did at the time we're recording this, he's on his way to San Diego Comic-Con as he's still deep in the biz. He's a fun guy on Twitter to follow. He's got fun stuff. And if you want to tell him you like Megas XLR, he is very responsive as well.
He'll let you down easy.
Yes, yeah.
By saying, we can't do it.
I mean, I'm glad he's, that's the kind of thing many people wouldn't be open about, of just saying like, yeah, it's fucking accountants. That's why we can't do it. Because that does put a lot of blame on businessmen and Cartoon Network that if you want to keep working with Cartoon Network, you probably shouldn't blame them, even if it's true that they ended your show thanks to tax bullshit. But I appreciate that Kirstick has been very open about that. Matt, you were telling us that they're going to do a Megas panel at a Pasadena convention soon?
Yeah, it's some convention called ToonCon in Pasadena. They're going to do like just a Megas panel. It seems like they're all going to be there. Let me see if I can find the actual... The thing is they've just like tweeted about it, and ToonCon hasn't announced their lineup yet. So there's no like official information. The main announcement they made was the guy who inspired Coop will be there.
Ooh.
So Coop himself will actually be there.
Will he be
I don't know
eating
for sure
burgers?
who else will be there.
He'll
he'll eat a burger in front of you and blow up a house.
So maybe hope springs anew for Megas XLR. The most recent update on the stuff I heard was, a few years ago. So maybe there's new developments. Maybe Cartoon Network figured out a way to sell it to Titmouse or something. Who knows? But I mean, it's definitely a cooled off property. That's for sure. I mean, I feel like they'd all be better off just making a new thing. And I don't want to say the ship is entirely sailed on Megas, but it has.
It's been 15 years, yeah.
But all right, why don't we take a trip back in time, not unlike Kiva Andrews, but we're just going back 15 whole years to the debut of Megas XLR in the first episode, Test Drive.
Megas XLR will continue in a moment. How did you get to be such a good pilot?
Hey, Coop.
To know.
Every kid needs a giant robot now and then. Get yours. Megas XLR. 1 hour premiere. Saturday, May 1st at 9. Only Toonami.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Break. It's Henry Gilbert and I am sitting on a couch playing video games just like Coop.
Hey everybody, it's Bob Mackey, and I heard somewhere that chicks dig giant podcasts, so we make some big ones.
Oh, do we ever? And we thank you very much for listening to this podcast, just like we thank Matthew J., our special guest from Cartoons 101 and the Deep End Podcast, for coming on and sharing with us all of his love and knowledge of the Megas XLR series. We thank you guys for listening, and a special thanks to all our supporters of the Talking Simpsons Network on patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
That's right. If you go to that website and subscribe at the $5 level, you get every episode of this podcast 1 week at a time and ad-free. And that also goes for Talking Simpsons. At that $5 level, all kinds of podcasts will be unlocked for your listening pleasure, including all of our mini-series, and that includes Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, Talking of the Hill, and whatever our patrons vote to be our fall mini-series to close out the year. We also have community podcasts, end-of-season wrap-ups, deleted scene specials, so many interviews, and so much more. If you subscribe at the $5 level today, you'll unlock everything we've made for the past 2+ years. That's almost too many podcasts, but not actually too many podcasts. You want to listen to all of them multiple times.
All.
Yes,
but
you can
so much fun.
Fill your life with all the podcasts we've made since 2017. And Henry, we also have a $10 podcast at the $10 level that's extra long every month. What's happening there?
Yes, if you enjoy the What a Cartoon podcast, but which was double length, we've got you covered. We do the What a Cartoon movie podcast once a month. We've been doing it since November of last year, and boy, oh boy, is it a ton of fun. We cover a different animated feature film each month, and this most recent one was Beavis and Butthead Do America, the Mike Judge theatrical adaptation of the MTV classic that's way better than you maybe even remember. And before that, we did films like Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Kiki's Delivery Service, Akira, A Goofy Movie, The Secret of Nim, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the original Aladdin, and Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Vacation. That's over 24 hours of podcasting goodness right there. Premium, extra long podcasts only available for our $10 and up folks. And if you sign up now, in August, you'll be getting the newest one that we'll be doing then too, voted on by our patrons. You can't miss it all for just $10 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. So now, why don't we shift into first gear and give a listen to the second half of our Megas XLR podcast.
Using your parents' garage to modify a giant robot. Free. New friendship with a pretty girl from outer space. Free. Using your video game skills to cause mass destruction. Free. Saving the world without a clue. Priceless.
Anyone else want some of this?
All new episodes of Megas XLR. Next Saturday night at 9. Come and get it. Only Toonami.
And now, back to Megas XLR.
Where'd they come from?
The future. Now hand over my robot.
On Toonami.
Living here in Jersey, fighting villains from afar. You gotta find first gear in your giant robot car. You dig giant robots, I dig giant robots, we dig giant robots, just dig giant robots. Nice.
So the episode test drive begins with a cold open. There's no opening on this show. I think it's probably the only one without the OP. The OP is really good. It's an original song about the show, written by Ragtime Revolutionaries is the name of the band.
They sound like a pop punk outfit.
Perfect for the time. But you don't get them there. There's just no room for it. And also, the cold open functions really well of, like, the first 6 minutes is a totally different show. It's just a straight and kind of boring anime.
I was wondering for this first one, would it have been better if we started with Coop? Just because you're not sure what you're getting. You don't know what you're getting.
Yeah. I do it is, this feels like an executive fear, but I kind of agree with it is if you're making new viewers wait 6 minutes to see the actual show, that's almost too long.
And there's no intro song up front to let you know what the show is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, well, this is just kind of straightforward space battle. I don't know if I want this.
Yeah, it's intentionally feels very normal and plain. Like it, not that Kiva doesn't look cool or the monsters don't look cool, the Glorft, but they're not. There's not a real hook yet in the show. But it is about setting tone, too, to let you know that this is a typical anime mecha show that is then interrupted by a fat guy from New Jersey. But yes, it's the very big scale for the opening, like going through space, showing all the smashed up shit around Earth, and shows you that Earth is just destroyed. And
I like them telling Kiva, like, don't do this, you're not ready, like that kind of thing. And she's like, no, it's our only chance, I have to do this. And it even shocks the Glorf. They're like, oh shit, we got to follow her. And then like, I like both sides, the good and the bad guys in this future war getting screwed by this big thing happening. And then everyone relies on Coop from here on out.
Kiva is so well designed as like you'd think she's the main character of another show who is usurped in this show. Like I like the design on her robot. It's a very kind of sleek, like Macross meets Evangelion type design. It's not big and boxy. Like definitely the Megas is much more of a Gundam for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And, the anime fight scenes in this look good for budget-wise what they have, but maybe that, too, would be kind of a turnoff to a snobby kid who just watched a cool Nadesco robot fight.
Yeah, I'm sure I was approaching it with that perspective. So they certainly didn't have enough money and didn't overwork themselves enough. They probably overworked themselves a lot, but not to the extent that an anime studio would.
We get to see the Glorft chasing down the remaining human survivors. The Glorft really kind of remind me of like the Zentradi from Macross, but also kind of the Vogons from Hitchhiker's Guide. A little bit of each. But they're like these squids in robot suits. So maybe, too, they're a little Dalek, I suppose. But I'm only assuming that because I've never watched an entire episode of Doctor Who, and I don't plan on it. What I like, too, in these fight scenes is like there's no G.I. Joe parachutes. Like robots blow up and nobody says like you killed blank, but they don't not say it.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like, there are on-screen deaths. I think they're probably just not allowed to say, oh, no, Roy, or whatever, like, shut someone's name.
Yes. And we get to see the original Megas XLR head, too, when Kiva approaches the prototype, and it's just Optimus Prime. It's just Optimus Prime's head. I love how clearly they just draw it on there. She's trying to get to pilot it so she can fight against them, but Kiva realizes now is too late. They need to go a different route.
Commander, what are you doing?
My job, taking Megas into the past.
Negative. The time flux is untested. We don't even know if your modifications to the Glorf technology have stabilized. If anything goes wrong, you could be trapped in a timeless temporal rift forever.
We don't have a choice, Captain. Megas would have made all the difference at the Battle of the Last Stand.
In theory.
I know that with Megas, I can turn the tide and change the outcome of the war we lost. I have to take it back there now.
We'll keep them off your back as long as we can.
And Kiva thinks she's going to get to pilot this robot in this show that she's a star of. And Wendy Lee is really good at she's a great actress and voice director too. And I think she's playing Kiva just the right level, which makes it even funnier as when she's the straight man later in the show.
I like that it's a robot that Earth stole from the Glorft and modified. So both sides also have the same goal. Like, it's our robot, we need it back. And I like that it gives them both like the same amount of want for this robot. And it's also basically Zeta Gundam, which is cool.
Yeah. Actually, that ownership battle is such a key thing to the show that like every Coop changed it himself. Kiva changed it too, but the Glorft made it as well.
I was gonna say it's a cool touch that this takes place in like after we lost a war, and it's just trying to fix that thing that happened in time. I like that idea for a premise.
Last ditch effort to do something and go back in time.
Kiva uses this space stuff to open up the portal, which it shows Gorath's main flaw is that he constantly underestimates humans. He's like, they couldn't figure that out. They can't even tell time, let alone change time. And he also, when told by his assistant that they open up a wormhole. I love Clancy Brown's delivery of like, "Thank you, Commander, for stating the brutally obvious." a great line there. Kiva gets as close as she's ever going to piloting the Megas, but an explosion happens. She can't land in it, and the Megas gets pulled through the wormhole, as do she, and Gorath won't let it go, so the Glorfter also pulled into it.
I really like, we find out this later, but I like that the robot is not taken back directly to the point in time where the people find it. I like that it's taken back to an indeterminate point in time, and then the character has to find it and refurbish it. Sort of like the DeLorean when they hide it in the mine in Back to the Future 3 and have to like basically repair the entire thing to get it working again.
I love a time travel plot like that includes just like, well, this thing will have to travel through time normally. Like, and yeah, you know what? This opening takes place in the year 3000, just like Futurama as well, but like 3023
16 or so. Yeah, I forget. Yeah.
So yes, Kiva opens up a wormhole and everybody says, "Oh no."
Sir, we are too close to the anomaly. We have to back off. No! If we fall into it without any sort of temporal guidance system or coordinates, who knows where we may end up? We would be helpless and blind. I am not letting that mech escape! Full speed! Follow it in before the warp closes!
And then goes straight to the name of the show.
Straight to the George W. Bush era America.
It just hit me that Gorath's name is probably based on Shuma Gorath, the squid monster from Marvel vs. Capcom.
Totally, yeah. And Lovecraftian stuff.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's just a Lovecraft ripoff that they put in a Doctor Strange comic, and then when Capcom was looking through a catalog of Marvel characters to make in a fighting game, they decided they wanted the squid guy.
Yeah, they picked the one with tentacles who only shows up for one issue.
Mm-hmm.
But his animation is so cool.
Yeah.
cool.
Clearly they just wanted a squid. Yeah. So we go to present day, which would be 2004.
During the great ska resurgence.
Yes. And the camera goes down to our characters in a garage.
So, what's so important that I had to get up before noon? What's the big secret? You're looking at it. This is what you've been working on all this time? It's cool, but I mean, it's not that cool. Huh? Your mom's so gonna kill you.
He destroys his house. He's like, that is a good lunkhead introduction to Coop. He just wants to impress so much he destroys his home.
What struck me about the series, I mentioned before, like there's so much property damage, but there's never any sirens or people. Matthew, it's never explained as to why like this town has no population or there's no. Do authorities ever get involved? Is there anyone like watching this or broadcasting it?
Suburbs, dude. You know? It's the middle of the day. I think part of it is that these are a couple of low-life slackers who it's 1 p.m. and they're just like hanging out, and like everyone else is at work. Like no one's gonna bother. This is how it was. Like if you ever unemployed in the suburbs, it's this. You get woken up at like 7 a.m. by somebody weed whacking.
Oh yeah,
and then you walk around and there's nobody around for the rest of the day, and you feel like you're in a zombie movie because you don't have a job.
Both their lines together there to show that they are guys who still live in their parents' house, though they're clearly in their 20s. Like Jamie says, like, he just woke up at noon, and Coop destroys his mom's house. Like he says, your mom is going to be mad about this.
And he lives in the basement. He has a couch in the basement with a bunch of video games. There's also a lot of this episode doesn't have so much of it. You'll see like a game controller or something, but later on there are very, very specific video game references to like, there's an episode where a bad guy gets trapped inside an Atari 2600 cartridge and Coop like tries it in all of his consoles, including like a GameCube and a Genesis and an NES, and then an Atari 2600. And there's also an episode where, we see the PS2 controller as one of the controllers for the robot when he in this scene where he lets him into the cockpit. And then later on, the CPU breaks, something breaks, and he has to do a manual override, and a DDR mat comes out, and he's got to dance on the DDR mat to control the robot, and then the robot dances while he fights people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I also like that Coop somehow got the robot under his home only so he could destroy his home.
Yeah, a lot of that is left unexplained. Like, wait a minute.
There's a lot of cartoony logic to this, which, like, that first joke really shows you how you're in a different show now than the opening told you were in. And same with, there's a lot of Coop I identify with. The only thing I don't really is that he's a gearhead. Like, I do not give a shit about cars at all. But it's such a cool idea, though, that a guy who constantly is souping up cars and putting garish Motorhead shit on it, he's the guy who gets a robot, of all people.
Yeah, I forgot. I mean, I remember the video game and anime stuff, but I forgot about the hot rod aspect with, like, the flames and the flaming 8-ball and things like that.
Yeah, but if you get a 2011 Honda Fit on top of there, I'll care. That's where I'll be invested.
I'm into that. A tricked out Fit. Drifting around town.
That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be drifting around Highland Park in my tricked out Honda Fit.
So the biggest additions to the show to take this from a 7-minute show to a 23-minute one in beefing up the pilot. First was the 6-minute intro. None of that was in lowbrow. And then the other thing was, it's just a one-off line that Coop says, I got out of the junkyard. It's just they move on from that immediately. This time, though, they go to the junkyard and show you Goat working there to fully show how he got it at the junkyard, which I also like that I've said it every time, but I miss the safe conspiracies of Bigfoot and Nessie. It's nice.
They were fun.
But yes, why don't we hear Goat playing Goat?
Coop, where'd you get this thing?
I found it under a bunch of stuff at the old junkyard.
So who do you think would win in a fight? Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster?
Oh, good match. I'd have to go with Bigfoot. He's fast. No one's even gotten his picture.
No way, man. Nessie is like 100 times his size, and she's got a wicked long neck.
Hey, Goat, what's in this pile anyway?
Don't really know. It's been around here since this place was open back in the 30s.
And you never went through it?
Nah, been too busy, what with all my social obligations and all.
But I've never seen you leave the junkyard.
Oh, yeah, all the time. I got things,
Okay, first off, I take the side of Nessie. She's just too tough. What can Bigfoot even do to Nessie?
It's huge.
Yeah.
To side with Bigfoot is foolishness.
Yeah, nowadays he'd be talking about who would win in a fight, Nexium or Comet Pizza.
Oh, God, yeah. Could the lizard people invade Comet Pizza? Who's better at abducting children? That would be his guess now.
Those pizza ovens get hot. You must stay away from them.
But also, yeah.
The lizards, they'd want to be closer to them.
That's true. They would just lay on top of the ovens.
Yeah.
But that's when the ovens would strike. But Goat too is taking a similar role that he had in Downtown, which was he was like the guy who was much older than the guys in their 20s hanging out with them. He's like the grizzled old veteran who also is kind of a weirdo, and people, when you dig more into his personal life, you're just like, what's your deal, Goat? What is it? Like, I like that kind of guy. If you spend too much time around bars, you will find that guy a lot in places. But yes, this is also where they show that his lollipop is not a cigarette, clearly and canonically. And I can't believe that MTV, it's the same guy. Same design and everything.
It's so close, but I guess MTV didn't care.
No,
their fingers weren't on the pulse of Cartoon Network programming.
Yeah, and I guess the Cartoon Network people didn't either. Or maybe their defense was it's the guy who's voicing it. We're just drawing he owns the rights to himself.
Yeah,
or whatever.
He is his own likeness.
Though when Pernosky was working on Metalocalypse, they had this character of Goat appear in it as well, except he was not played by Scott. He was played by James Hetfield, the lead singer of Metallica.
Wow.
Which was very surprising to find out. But I think Metalocalypse was one of Pernosky's biggest gigs following Megas XLR, other than Venture Brothers. After this scintillating chat about conspiracies, Coop starts digging around in the $2 pile, and he has a lot of dumb questions.
How much for this?
Let's see here. $2.
How about this?
$2.
Hey, how about this?
$2.
How about...
$2. Anything in that pile, $2. I doubt that whole pile is worth more than $2.
Whoa. What's that?
No idea.
$2, huh? I'll take it.
Oh, man.
I appreciate the goat sticks to the deal, though. He said $2 and he accepts it. Even though he also doesn't get paid the $2, so that should still be his robot.
That's true.
Yeah, he yells at him later, where's my $2?
Then we get a fun little building the robot montage of him putting shit all over it with all the flames and him trying out different heads and kind of a different haircuts montage, sort of.
And barbecuing burgers with a blowtorch.
I love that.
Yeah, toast those buns.
Tasty. Yeah. And I also like how when he finally puts the right car on it, Goat doesn't give him a thumbs up. He gives him the devil horns. Like that was an extra character touch for old Goat there. And yes, after the building montage is done, we get a really cool looking mech that is outfitted in a bunch of car culture bullshit, which I think is a wonderful metaphor for a U.S. approach to anime concepts.
That's true. It's gaudy as hell.
Yep, yeah. That we take a nice thing like anime and that we have to make it as diesel as hell. Like that's such a cool concept to the show that's like driving the show. It's a really cool idea. Then Coop lists all the things that are weapons in it, which I think a lot of it he uses in the big fight in the show. Then Jamie starts fantasizing about what they could do while Coop fantasizes different things. And it's a nice little moment of like the differences between innocent and simple Coop versus the kind of, conniving Jamie who's a get rich quick kind of guy.
He wants to chase girls with a giant robot?
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
They cut through that pretty fast. There's actually a worse version of that joke in the pilot. Where he uses the robot King Kong style to reach a giant hand in and pull a woman out of her bed, which if they removed the idea of it being a King Kong homage, is just him kidnapping a woman in her underwear.
Yeah. I'm glad they changed that joke.
Yes, yeah. I mean, spiritually, it's basically the same thing, that he wants to get it to literally pick up girls, not get dates. So the gag in the pilot is, the other two gags are the same, but when it's the robot hand grabbing a woman, in Coop's memory, it's him grabbing a fancy old classic car and putting that in his hand. Not chasing an ice cream truck, which is more of a fatty joke than... which they already kind of did with the burgers filling up Fort Knox.
That's true, yeah. I guess we had a worse joke, but we lost the kind of sketchy joke.
I also like that he's a wrestling fan. I love that about Coop. Again,
wrestling is incorporated into his robot moveset, too.
You got to think he's played a lot of wrestling video games at this time. A lot of SmackDown versus Raw in 2004. And yes, also, to let you know that this is the mid-2000s, there's a car alarm joke of like, you turn off the car alarm. Nobody does those jokes anymore, even though car alarms don't know when to turn off now also.
I like when there's a gigantic dongle she has too when the alarm goes off.
Oh yes. She's not pressing a button inside her mech. Her mech is pressing a button. That's pretty fun. I like that too, yeah. But yeah, so the alarm is going off because Kiva and her drone, she makes sure to say drones because bad stuff happens to those robots too.
That's right. Okay, yeah.
And also in Kiva's design, I like that she has like, the standard kind of e-assurance version of anime, like with the bangs covering her eyes, but you can see the eyes through them. And she kind of has like a matrix plug in the back of her head too, which she's a really well-designed character of just a bunch of anime stereotypes into one. But Kiva shows up to let the guys know that they need to give up the robot.
Hey!
This is Commander Kiva Andrew of the Earth Coalition. That robot is a very dangerous weapon, and I want it back!
Hey, I found it. It's mine. Finders keepers.
I repeat, surrender Magus or face the consequences.
I got your consequences right here. What are you doing? Can you even drive this thing? Hey, how hard can it be? Now where's first gear? Yay! Oops. You can drop me off now. Too late. Hold on.
That was them crushing the school, which as long as kids are outside of the school and cheering, then it's fine
Luckily,
to do it.
they were all thrown clear of the explosion. I don't like
It
that.
also kind of references a line from the theme song, or the other way around. You got to find first gear in your giant robot car.
Oh
yeah. I mean, I'm overthinking the premise and everything, but I don't like that they show that there are people, because then I think of all the people in the buildings.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, with all the
grown-ups,
with all the property damage in this, it takes me back to like, this is less than 3 years after 9/11, and it shows how different things were feeling then. Because like freaking within a year of 9/11, like there was an episode of Invader Zim they didn't want to air because they're like, oh, somebody does a gas attack on a city, or they changed the opening of Futurama for a time because the ship crashes into a building. Like it used to be indirectly after 9/11, they didn't want to show building destruction, but now less than 3 years after when this show debuts, like, the joke is that Coop causes more damage than any villain on the show and just destroys. That great gag of the it was really more like an Iron Giant laser that comes, like, builds around his arm when he just obliterates that one building.
Plus, if you drive around New Jersey these days, all those buildings are empty. They're all long condemned. Nobody owns property anymore. It's all empty.
And Coop's only legal defense is finders keepers. So, but that's all he needs. That's all he thinks. In this whole scene, I love that she has anime speed lines like projected onto her scenes, or all of the like pew pew, like the kind of like shiny noise. I don't know what to call it.
I think it's like shing.
Yeah, a real shing. Well, meanwhile, Coop just moves very slowly and stupidly, especially with his. They got to wait for the convertible top to come down.
I like
before
that
the
little
fight
moment of awkward silence.
There wasn't time for that joke in the lowbrow pilot. They had to speed things up. And yes, also they have a cool little fight scene. Like you get a fist shot off, like classic fist being shot off, which is Coop starting the fight, as Jamie will point out in the next clip. And then it's a fun little fight, not they're saving the big fireworks for the end of the episode, but it's a good fight. And once it's over, Coop gets a little sexist.
Hey, you're pretty good for a girl.
Stupid ape! We're wasting time. There's no reason to fight. That robot you're piloting was sent back to this time by mistake.
Hey, you started it.
Actually, you did, Coop.
Listen! We need Magus to avert an alien invasion in the far future. We captured that robot from the Glorft, an advanced race that conquered Earth, so we could use it against them.
Huh?
I've spent the last 2 years modifying Magus so I could take it back to a point in the conflict where we could help change the outcome of the war in the future.
Huh?
I'll make this as simple as possible. I need Magus to save the Earth, and I need it now, before the Glorf figure out how to track me through the time stream. My robot wasn't meant to be a toy for a prehistoric Yahoo and his pet monkey thing.
Monkey thing? Monkey thing! Blaster, Coop! What? Get off, you're gonna wreck it!
The one thing I feel that dates the show a bit is that Kiva's really like a cool character and everything. I like her voice, but it was like the classic woman character is the kind of dour voice of reason to these two idiots who are always wrong, but the most entertaining people on the show.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a Leela kind of character.
Very much a Leela
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they would probably try to have like a different or like have a fun female character, not always like the bring down scold in that mold.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. I mean, at least she's more understandable than Leela. Well, sometimes Leela has good reason to be like, God, Fry, you're so stupid. But in Kiva's case, she really is like, I am the right person to pilot this, and you stole this thing from me, and I have to save all of humanity. And you're just this fat idiot who won't give me my robot.
I could see the choice they're making. It's like she is from the series anime, and she's entered this like goofy Cartoon Network show full of jerks.
Yeah. Well, Matt, does how much does Kiva's character like change or evolve during the show, or does she not? not?
She doesn't. No, they like very, very lightly hint at a possible romance between them. Not Coop, between her and Jamie. But that's like it. There's an episode. There's some jokes about her like trying to acclimate to modern Earthling life, where she like goes to the mall and gets regular clothes and stuff. But she still kind of stays the same way. And there's always like they'll have a moment where they're eating a burger or whatever, and they're like, "Come on, live a little," and she'll be like, "Okay," and like. Take a bite or whatever, but that's it. Like, she doesn't really get much room to do much.
Well, I mean, and for comedy's sake, that is what she's supposed to be. Like, the joke would work the same if you swap the genders of Jamie and Kiva. Like, that could be, but I guess it's not as much of a love triangle then, I suppose. Though, yeah, I did get that feel that it's supposed to be Jamie and Kiva as a couple, because I know in the finale, in the future, Jamie and Kiva are dating, which when an alternate future shows you that two characters are a couple, that's a show announcing who the official couple is supposed to be.
And I think Coop is like Jughead. He doesn't like women, only burgers. He's a very Jughead-style creature.
I want that from him. He should be asexual, just loves his burgers. This is why Kiva is a good launching pad for comedy, but she herself isn't funny, though Wendy Lee does a great job with the characters she's supposed to be. Like, she's giving, important exposition that explains the entire concept of the show, but the good jokes are all Coop just going, huh? I also like in their fight that it is plotted like how a first fight in an anime series goes. Like, I think back to the first episode of Gundam where, Amuro gets in the big new robot. He's nowhere near as good as a trained Xeon pilot, but that doesn't matter because he has such a technologically advanced outfit. And that's how it is here too. Kiva is doing way better than him, but the Megas is so powerful she can't beat it. It's got her lasers just bounce right off him. And when Jamie, I like Stephen Blum's delivery of monkey thing, like he screams it so good. I'm more used to Blum playing like more cool guy characters and tough guys. So it's funny that he's given the shrimpy nerd
little
role.
Wormy guy.
The little wormy guy.
With a big long neck on that guy.
Quite a neck, yeah. When they say to pull out the big laser, then out of the chest comes basically Space Battleship Yamamoto.
Yeah, maybe the most obvious parody.
Or sorry, Yamato. Yes, yeah.
Matsumoto.
Very, very obvious parody. Shooting the laser that the ship shoots as well in the show. And it's a pretty cool, it's a pretty cool laser blast too. I love seeing it. And then Coop pulls off the wrestling move, the belly to belly suplex on Kiva's robot, which really puts her down for the time being. When they get back up, Kiva wonders just how he could how to get good.
How did you get to be such a good pilot?
Well... Hey, Coop, she's jacking your ride.
What have you done to my robot?
My robot. Mine. Pretty cool, huh? Well, I dropped in a new engine, did some body work, gave him a 671 Jimmy Huffer, 10 CD changer.
What did you do with the time flux control unit? It used to be right there.
Right on!
Oh, yeah. I couldn't fix that part.
Without it, Megas is trapped here in the past. And so am I. With you.
Well, my robot was all busted up when I found it. So I did the best I could.
You ruined it. Earth is doomed. There's no way I can pilot Megas now.
Nope, but we sure can. Kicked your butt, huh?
Hey, what do you mean we?
Coop is very defensive on Jamie trying to be a co-star in this show. He's like, I did it.
They're all vying for being the hero of this program here. And that CD changer has got to be in the trunk.
Oh, I love that 10 CD changer. That made me laugh the most of his descriptions.
All ska.
And also a very Family Guy cutaway to him smashing the flux capacitor. Or time flux. It's a flux capacitor.
Yeah, we know.
We all know.
We know what they're doing.
But yes, and the gag of, it's a little visual gag, but just the answer is that he played video games his entire life and he's just a couch potato. And I love that in the time lapse, it's just him getting bigger and taller. Well, meanwhile, Jamie has a more interesting thing of like, he's a glasses-wearing skinny nerd, and then in one of the cuts, he becomes a goth. And
he's trying on different looks. And the controller keeps changing, too, based on the era, which is nice.
It's real. Like, that is like... I've complained about it so many times on shows, but when, like, just in the Weekenders, when a 2001 video game makes a bleep bloop, I'm like, no, that's not what they sounded like then. This is clearly done by people who play the video games and can say in the, sound editing, no, that's not what that video game sounds like. Kiva takes advantage of him flashing back to steal his ride, which I like that gag too. That his flashback was happening in real time, so he was just staring into the sky for like 10 seconds.
I do like any joke about that, about what's happening in the world while the character is thinking of something.
Then he gets very defensive, like, well, I did fix it. Like, it was pretty jacked up, so it would have just been broken anyway. He's not a bad guy, Coop is. He's not stealing it. Then Kiva, now that she has fully understood what's going on, she explains the mission as only she can as an exposition machine.
That's it. You'll have to do it. You're the only one who can pilot Megas now. As much as I hate to admit it, you're our last hope at defeating the Glorft in the future.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Look, Red, I'm no hero. I'm just a guy from Jersey, okay? I want to cruise around in this baby, smash stuff, maybe pick up some chicks.
Chicks dig giant robots.
Look, whether you like it or not, now that you have Megas, mankind's future is in your hands. I'll have to train you, of course. And I'll have to fix the time flux unit.
Thanks, but I don't need any training. I know this bot like the back of my hand.
Idiot! That was the Tachyon beacon! The Glorft can find us now.
Whoops.
So, these Glorft guys are like invincible aliens who drive supersized, ugly, snot-green robots?
Yes. How did you know?
'Cause that kind of looks like them.
I love he presses a do not press button. An always funny joke. I like that. For the ads kind of read of like, hey, I'm not a hero. I'm just some guy from New Jersey. Love that line.
That button that he presses also becomes a big fun freeze frame joke later where every time he hits it, it says something silly, or like one time it says like every weapon, and sometimes it'll say like, is he serious? Like things like that. They're not great jokes, but they're cute.
There should be like a little plastic thing you have to flip up on top of that button though. It's too easy to hit.
It's another design mistake in Coop. He just, he put together what he could, but safety isn't really a high priority for Coop in his designs of things. That was basically Kiva giving the entire like mission statement of the show right there. The Glorft arrive as soon as he presses the button. Like they just show up, which is pretty good. They got to speed this up. It's time to get to the big final robot fight. This is one of the scenes they reused a bit from Lowbrow, and I just noticed it because like the animation on Gorath's mouth is really good.
I was like, there's extra care being put into this lip sync in a way that's not feel like a streamlined TV production. It stood out to me.
Yeah, I think Pernosky really, like, it's funny that the Sakuga in this mecha show is when a squid monster talks, not during the fight so much.
Yeah, it feels like someone sat down to animate a voice track, not like it was handed off with a mouth chart to Korea or something like that.
I mean, the Glorf probably have a tough mouth chart, but with all those swinging tentacles hanging off their chins.
It gets less detailed later. That's some pilot.
Oh, yeah.
Extra pilot money stuff in there.
Maybe that was Madhouse really showing off, too. They're like, oh, we'll do this upright. Madhouse on the production of the pilot, I mean. But yes, we get the first meeting of Coop and Gorath here, and they don't like each other.
What an awful camouflage pattern. Attention, Earther Drakes. Surrender the stolen warbot, or we vaporize this city. You are no match for the Glorft.
Wow, I'm getting pretty popular. Too bad it's with crazy redheads and aliens. So, I'm guessing that whole story of yours was true.
Look at them all. These odds are awful.
You're right. It is kind of unfair. Now, it's fair. All right, you alien chumps, you in my town. And nobody gets to wreck it. Except for me. Okay, where's first gear again?
as Monday morning quarterbacking on this sound editing, I'll allow one record scratch. 2 record scratches in an episode.
One was objectionable, but I'll take one.
a little much to go to 2, and also 2 in like a 3-minute period. But I mean, it's funny. I do like his when he realizes he has been destroying the town quite a lot already. Though I guess if he doesn't stop the Gorft, they're going to destroy everything. So that's like getting mad at the Hulk for wrecking stuff instead of letting alien invaders destroy the entirety of America in Avengers.
I like that the weird gag that they do, it actually pays off, where he knocks a satellite out of the sky.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's
well, I also like his macho bullshit on knocking down the Kiva's robot, so she can't even join in the fight. He's like, nope, just gonna be me.
He wants to be the hero.
Did you see the logo on it?
Oh yes, he shoots a missile, it goes up into the air, and it's I believe it's Pop TV is the name of it, right? But we all know what that logo looks like.
That happens many times on the show. Like every other episode or so, they destroy something with Pop TV on it.
Seems like they weren't happy with MTV.
No, I don't think so. Well, actually, yes. I have a clip of what the satellite is saying, and it really shows you how they feel about MTV and what replaced their animated programming.
Our brand new high-tech satellite station is online. Now we can beam Pop TV to every television worldwide. 24/7 shows about rock stars remodeling your house.
Yeah, it wasn't even a hokey old, like, they don't play music anymore. It's more like they only play reality shows now.
Yes,
they don't even play cool cartoons anymore.
Which I guess is what MTV is now too, I guess. What is it still?
Yeah, what is it? I know VH1 has been just reality shows since this time.
Yeah.
This point
Teen
in time.
Wolf's still on. They did Teen Wolf for a long time.
Yeah, that show's gone now though too. But that was original programming they did not too long ago. I mean, do they still do those super exploitative pregnant children shows? Like,
oh right,
I'm 16 and pregnant.
Yeah. I think so.
No, they're informative. They're documentaries, guys. We shouldn't think of them as exploitative, but that it's specifically attacking like cribs and exhibits, Pimp My Ride, like that. Very correct in 2004. Though, one of the first Titmouse jobs after Tom Green's film was the intro to the Osbournes. They animated that as well.
Biting the hand that feeds them.
Once they got enough MTV jobs, I think by that point they knew it was drying up. They weren't going to be selling any shows to MTV.
Oh, yuck. This was Osbourne's
Yeah, I'm looking
time.
at today's whole schedule for MTV.
Okay.
And it is 100% that show Ridiculousness, the Tosh.0 kind of show with that asshole that hosts it.
Right.
And then occasionally broken up by 2 to 4 hours of Jersey Shore Family Vacation.
And
then exactly 1 slot of X on the Beach. That's all.
Sure. Okay.
What?
Wow.
Is that like a treasure hunt?
I think it's
yeah. Your ex marks the spot. You have to find your ex lover, and they're lining up a treasure chest.
I know about the Jersey Shore reunion only because I stupidly, instead of just stealing it somewhere, I watched Moonbeam City's first episode on the Comedy Central app. So every 20 minutes, it was like, here's a commercial for the reunion show for Jersey Shore, which is just like, Jesus Christ, it's old enough to have a reunion show now. That's
So
sad.
X on the Beach is about it's a dating show for reality show stars who think they're appearing on a dating show only to be completely blindsided when their exes crash the scene.
Oh man.
So you can't even get regular people on dating shows. They have to be already famous.
I mean, at this point, I would say 5,000 people have appeared on reality shows. So you got a pretty deep pool to go from.
They're a significant voting block.
But all in California, so, it's like the Republicans got nothing to go for there. But yes, I do like them biting at MTV in this gag here of them exploding their satellite, which that gag is not in lowbrow. Actually, the way the bomb thing pays off is similar in the lowbrow pilot, but it's just that it's shot up into the air and the bomb itself or missile itself just crashes back down and explodes. They play it a little differently in Test Drive. But yeah, then we just get a big old fight scene of just smashing around with robots, and Jamie and Kiva very pointedly put on their seatbelts after seeing how dangerous it's going to be.
I like the Hadoken we get in here too.
Yeah. And like kind of a sumo super move of him slapping his hands together and the wave of sound smashing people away.
He kind of does like a belly flop in the beginning too, right?
Yeah.
Like he just falls down on them with his arms out.
There's some really cool moves in all this that I like a lot. But the as the fight goes on, Kiva is not impressed.
You know all that stuff I said about you being Earth's last hope? I've changed my mind. Let me drive.
And we also get cross-cutting of different controllers controlling the robot. And also there's a really great moment. I love the animation on Coop head-butting the giant red button
That's
for
very
his big
good.
move.
Yeah. And then flying into the kind of robot monster's mouth.
Yes, and exploding it from the inside. Great action. And the little fun callback cutaway to Goat seeing the fight and just yelling that Coop still owes him $2. And the controllers are pretty accurate. I mean, the especially the PS1 or 2 controller.
Yeah, they're different enough to not get sued, but you know what they're going for.
And Wendy Lee does do a good job of at least playing like sarcastic and disappointed, which I don't know why I didn't think of Leela the whole time. You're very right. Like Leela had all these same lines.
It does for comedy shows of this era. It's very much like women being written by men, where it's just like, what are women? They're smarter than us. They're better than us. They're not funny. Mm-hmm. They ruin all fun.
It's at least a way. Yeah, it seems like an interesting approach to the Smurfette thing, where they're like, we recognize that women didn't have big parts in all these action shows in the 90s, so we wrote in one woman who is actually the best at action, but she's still going to stand over there and not be the main character.
Over there.
And we also, I like that they constantly take time to pan across and show all the destruction Coop has caused in saving the city. Then, as the fight progresses, Gorath has run out of patience.
Yeah, come on. You got any more? We need more bad guys to smash.
How about one more? Human filth piloting my stolen prototype. Although you've put up a good fight, I will have to destroy you now.
Bring it on, Squidhead.
And I like them talking to each other there. I like also the that Kiva just is like, you have to give up when you face this giant robot. He's like, no wonder you guys lost. Like, he's calling the Earth's humanity that got wiped out. He's like, you're a bunch of losers. Very cold of Coop there.
I love the combining robots. They combine into other things that combine.
Yeah, that's so involved and silly.
It's way over the top. But UMD, it makes me think of like Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo on a crappy format.
The transformation of the UMD and also the zoom out to show its scale next to XLR is really great. Like, it is nothing. Like, the UMD is the size of a state. Like, that's how huge it is.
It just flicks Megas through buildings.
And the animation on the buildings exploding is great too, especially like the circle of destruction behind him as he goes through one of them. Like, which again, after 9/11, this is just shocking so soon after it. This is way before people like Zack Snyder got to make 9/11 porn movies like Man of Steel.
Every episode of this show takes place on Memorial Day, and they're all stage jobs, so don't worry, everyone's fine. They're all barbecuing on the beach, the Jersey Shore. We just talked about it.
And so the MTV gag pays off with just the giant satellite drops on the UMD and takes it out. Gorath runs away, but lets us know he'll be fighting on in more sexy and fun adventures.
We'll meet again, Earth of Filth. And next time, I'll destroy your world.
Yeah, whatever. Why don't you go on home now? I think I hear your mom calling.
Yeah, and next time we ain't gonna go so easy on you.
Again with the we.
Take us back to the fleet. We need to rearm ourselves.
Sir, we can't return. Once we dropped out of the time anomaly, we became stranded here in Earth's past.
We're trapped here?
Yes, sir.
Hearing Kevin Michael Richardson explain things also does take me back to Clerks, because that's basically the voice he used at the start of Clerks to tell people that let's mock our celebrities.
This is really his rise to power of this era.
But yes, that is a classic Skeletor, I'll get you next time, He-Man kind of go away thing, which feels like a very intentional thing there. And just to let you know that the monsters are stuck there too, so they'll be there for recurring villain appearances. Though they fight other people than the Gorft throughout the show. It's not just a Gorft fight series.
They can retreat to no space, whatever that is.
That's just magic. It's where wizards are. They just go. The wizards did that. And then we get our last clip of the episode, where first off we get to hear the funny sci-fi swear word of Jorblocks, which I think means ass, though I think
it means balls. I'll have your jaw blocks.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and then also a good parting shot from old Coop here.
Take us into no space so that we can effect repairs.
Don't you mean run away because we got our jaw blocks handed to us by one Earther? Not the face!
Tread lightly, Commander, or you might find yourself at the head of the next assault. Without a mech!
Well, they weren't so tough. Who wants a burger? 4 or 5?
Monkey thing, huh?
I should have stayed in the future.
That's like 3 tags in a row. They're like, let's just do all of them.
Could have ended on any one of those. But you get a fun little pop punk outro.
Yeah, it's an original ending where you just get like 3 scenes of them ordering at the drive-thru, but you see that he picked up the burger place to actually give him the food in his car, even though he should have just got out of his robot. But Coop kind of just won't do it. And I guess the McDonald's ripoff they go to is the only thing that's standing. Yes, yeah. Though that feels inaccurate to me, Matt. Jay, shouldn't they go to a Wawa and get a Hoogie?
You know what? Yeah, I bet they would do a lot of meatball hoagies, meatball subs, BLT hoagies. Let's see what else. Italian hoagie. Yeah, that seems like what he'd be into.
Are Sheets out there too? Can you go to Sheets?
Sheets are in Philly, kind of on the outskirts, like more in the suburbs, and it's a big war between if you prefer Wawa or Sheets, if you're from the area. Although I've never been in a Sheets.
Oh wow.
They were more further outside of Philly than when I lived in the city.
Yeah, Sheets started popping up in Ohio right before I left, and it was great because you could order things and not talk to anyone. It was just a nice touch screen.
Oh,
yeah,
your
that's
hangover food.
They kind of pioneered that before McDonald's or anyone else had it.
Man, this is making me sad. I've never had a Wawa or a Sheets sandwich. They're not.
You need to live, man.
Well, we had Firehouse Subs. That was ours, local one. Or
Publix.
Publix. Well, also you guys didn't have Whataburgers where you live, so you were also missing out.
Yeah, I've never had one of those. If I ever make
times.
it to like Texas or Florida or the places that have those, I'd like to try it.
Chick-fil-A is now in Los Angeles, so if that's there, I feel like Whataburger's coming soon. We walked by that Chick-fil-A, which was so strange to me because it seemed like this was on Hollywood Boulevard or near it, that it was like, it seemed to have no indoors. It seemed to only be outdoor seating.
Yeah, it was old-timey gay hate encounter.
Yeah.
Some places like that are around here. There's an In-N-Out near my friend James's house that is like that, and it's cool. We go there a lot.
That sounds nice and less homophobic.
This is our food tangent, but I moved to California about 10 years ago, and it always makes me laugh whenever Californians freak out over something I grew up with, like Dunkin' Donuts or Chick-fil-A. Like, Dunkin' Donuts is finally here! So you could have kind of mediocre coffee and donuts now. Congratulations.
Yes, yeah. I remember guilting a guy who moved here, just like, there's not enough Taco Bells in the Bay Area. I'm like, there's a Mexican place every corner in the Bay Area. Like, just have that.
But it's not like the alien facsimile of Mexican food.
Yeah, it's true. It's made by the Gorft, yeah, no doubt.
I'm hungry now.
But yeah, I think that was a fun first episode, and I want to watch more. I think the next one I'm going to watch is the first Bruce Campbell episode with Magnanimous, because again, I love MODOK. I love MODOK jokes, but now everybody's going to know who MODOK is because he's getting his own animated series with Patton Oswalt as the star of it.
Oh, you're right about that.
Kevin Smith writing it or something. I know he's doing Howard the Duck.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That makes sense.
I bet we'll see some clips of that at Comic-Con, or will have seen them in the past when you hear this. But anyway, yes, I really enjoy this. I wish, like I said about other shows we've done on here, I wish I'd watched it when it came out and didn't think I was too cool for it. This was the exact show I wanted to see in 2004, but I denied myself it.
I think doing this podcast has made us learn we were never too cool for anything.
No, yes.
We were always uncool.
We are still in negative cool points and
true.
should watch anything.
But yeah, I have the same feeling that I should have watched it when it was new. I kind of don't have time for it now because I have to catch up with so much stuff. But it was fun to check out this little blast from the past, and it was very faithful to the anime that I love, and it's all on iTunes. But I figure that if enough people buy it on iTunes, it will stop being on iTunes because once Cartoon Network breaks even, they gotta take it down. It's like, oh shit, we're 99 cents over our tax deductible.
Well, Matt, any other final thoughts?
I love this show. I think it's very underrated. It's one of those shows that whenever I mention it in public, like on the internet or something, I'll get like one or two people who are like, oh yeah, who like are excited to hear someone mention it. And then like a bunch more people who have never heard of it. So I hope that this gets some people to watch it. It's like you said in the beginning of the episode, it's very easy to find illegally, and it's pretty much everywhere. It used to all be on YouTube. Now the first episode's not on there, but it looks like a bunch more of them are. It's still, I think, very unique because other shows, you know, that reference anime and stuff don't get as specific, especially not about the era that this was referencing, which is a lot of like 70s and 80s stuff, you know, like your Gundams and your Battleship Yamatos and such. And it's also cool to see a kid's cartoon about a bunch of slackers in their early 20s. You don't get that a lot. And I always appreciate that because I feel like it's an audience that is severely neglected in terms of representation and animation.
That's true.
There's so many other kinds of white guy you can make cartoons about. Come on.
We come in so many varieties.
Give us more.
Yeah. I mean, we just did the Weekenders, and I think we were just escaping the kids doing kid stuff era of cartoons. Where it's like just kids having kid problems. We are getting out of that now in 2004, and I couldn't be happier in the past. So we've reached the end of this episode of What a Cartoon. Matthew J., you're our special guest. You're doing all kinds of great stuff on Patreon with podcasts. Can you please explain what you're doing and how we can support you?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I have the show The Deep End, which I think is a wonderful program that I make with my friend Steve Yurko, which is about every show that's ever aired on Adult Swim, but in a broader sense is just about adult animation on television in general. Some episodes that we have recently put out include we had Hal Lublin on to talk about Futurama. I think at the time of this recording have put up an episode about a pilot that never aired that was written by Nathan Barnett with him. He's a wonderful comedian, awesome guy. And we've got like an interview with James Urbaniak fine on there. Lots of cool stuff. Nick Weiger was on an episode about John Kay. Lots of cool stuff on there. And our Patreon for that is patreon.com/thedeepend, where you get a weekly show about the Venture Brothers. We're going through every single episode of that. Every episode gets an episode of our podcast. And we also have a monthly show about other adult animated series where we did Clone High. We did Undergrads, which we hated. We did Golden Boy. We did 3 South with a writer and producer from that show, Bill Freiberger. And the next one, like I said earlier, is Downtown. So that was not planned at all. That just came together. We've talked about doing that show for months. And I make Cartoons 101 at youtube.com/cartoons101 and patreon.com/cartoons101, where I do another podcast about adult animation. I have one right now about adult animated films, where I did Sausage Party with Nicole Rodriguez, who works on Steven Universe. And I just put up one about heavy metal that my buddies James and Mike came on to talk about with me. And I also did a series on Evangelion, a series on Satoshi Kon, and a series on Ralph Bakshi. So check that out at patreon.com/cartoons101.
And well, thanks so much, Matt. We'll definitely have you back the next New Jersey cartoon we do.
I love that. I'm fine with that being my brand.
New Jersey correspondent
New
in
Jersey
California.
cartoons.
So thanks again to Matthew J. for being on the show. Check him out on Twitter and all of his Patreon stuff. But as for us, if you want to support our show and get every episode a week in advance, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. If you sign up for just $5 a month, you'll get all that and access to all of our paywalled podcasts, including all of our miniseries, the most recent of which is Talking of the Hill, a 13-episode exploration of the first season of King of the Hill, and also the miniseries that will be coming in fall for patrons only. And at that $5 level, also too many things to mention here, but dozens and dozens of podcasts that you haven't heard yet, and it's very easy to access them using your podcast app or the Patreon app. And Henry, what is going on at the $10 level?
My goodness, so very much. We're getting close to a year of me and Bob doing our What a Cartoon Movie podcast only for our premium $10 and up patrons. It's like this, but twice as long or even longer, about a different animated feature film once a month. You know, we just talked about Beavis and Butthead Do America in this episode, and if you'd like to hear, I'd say 500 times as much of us talking about it, you will be be able to hear that only if you're a $10 and up patron at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and you'll get the entire back catalog as well. So please consider signing up at the $10 level or up in your $5 pledge. One more time, that's patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. Find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts, a classic gaming podcast, every Monday and occasionally on Friday. Go to retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast device. If you like old video games, I think you'll like this. Henry, what about you?
You can follow me, Henry Gilbert, on Twitter at HENEREYG. Follow me there for all the updates that we do on all of our wonderful podcasts. You'll learn about them as soon as they happen if you follow me on Twitter. One more time, that's HENEREYG.
Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week with the Bubblegum Crisis episode, Red Eyes.
Where's my jukebox?
Whether you're looking to build a website for your business, your hobby, your podcast, or just for fun, Pair Networks is your go-to web hosting partner. Not only do we have the lowest domain price in the industry, starting at just $11, we've got hundreds of stunning website templates to help you stand out from the crowd. You're not a techie? Not a problem. With our easy DIY site builders, you can launch your impressive website without any technical know-how. And when it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. Check out pair.com today to learn more. PAIR.com.